Welcome, everyone, to another live digital conversation here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. You have your host here, Tuafala, coming in live from the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. It is a little bit later than usual. Live digital conversation we have today. Be a Lone Ranger tonight. Mr. Aterra is tied up with family activities, but trying to keep at least one live digital conversation a week. That is our target. That is our goal. So excited for the program that we have this evening. Just want to let everyone know we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, and also on X. So those are the various platforms that we do go live on. Please, if you're on any of those platforms, please a like, a share, and a comment goes a very long way in getting us into more people's feeds. So really appreciate that. Also on TikTok, we do have a page there as well. So any support there would be greatly appreciated. For our uh, podcast platforms, we are also, let me pull up that banner here real quick so everybody can see it as well. But we're on every major podcast platform like Amazon, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. So that is another way that you can enjoy the content, whether you're driving in the car and if you're not typically on the other social media platforms. With that being said, um, we want to thank all of our paying members of the channel. One of the things that we do work hard to do is if you are a paying member on the channel, that we provide you some content to say thank you and give you access to some of our early interviews. One of the interviews that is only available to paying members right now is our latest interview with Minister Shane Jones from New Zealand, and we have that episode for paying members, and we also demonetized those member only videos so that as a member you get fewer interruptions. That's just one of the ways we really give a shout out to our paying members on the channel. As and also as a paying member, you do get priority if you do comment in the live during the live digital kava sessions, and we usually make an effort to bring your comments to the front. Also, if there's something that you really want to bring to the table for a discussion, a comment, a question, our super chats also is a great way to make sure your question or comment is highlighted, and we make a huge effort to recognize those super chats during the live digital kava sessions. With that being said, we are going to start with the program today. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at our videos on social media, a lot of the short videos, and then some of the questions and the comments, and responding um, to those questions and to those comments. So, with that being said, as I mentioned earlier, we had Minister Shane Jones. We were able to, Mr. Aotearoa in New Zealand was able to connect with the New Zealand First Party, and we were able to have the great opportunity to sit down with Minister Shane Jones of New Zealand First, have a conversation on his background, have some conversation about the politics and the economics in New Zealand, and also just have a interesting discussion there all as well. Um, we have a viewer here who is saying if you I yelled Caitlin. All right, we said yelled Caitlin. Throw in a digital kava bag there, Dream Core, and we will greatly appreciate that, and we'll use that digital kava bag to sustain us through the entire program. So, with that being said, I'm going to bring up here our first video that we're going to react to is a video from, let's share this real quick, from Shane Jones. He is a very recognized face and name in New Zealand politics, but we'll go ahead and do our first reaction to his one of his videos here, and then we'll get into our social media comments.
Kia ora, folks. Shane Jones here. Sadly, today, Parliament witnessed ideological compost, a philosophical dump from the Greens. They want to destroy mining.
As you can see, these guys, Winston Peters is also from New Zealand First. Shane Jones seems to be of the similar vein here, where he's straight to the point. They're old school. They're all about common sense and practicality. So kind of interesting to hear the terms that he's using to describe the Green Party. From the little bit I understand, is a very far left-leaning party, really over dedicated to the green. That maybe that's why they're called the Green Party, on kind of like a communist type of perspective as well.
They want to undermine your economy. They want to erode jobs. Green Party, you have no authority to confiscate, alienate, deny Kiwis or overseas investors their rights in New Zealand. And stop boasting that the first thing you're going to do, if God forbid you should ever hold power, is to completely destroy all of the investment rights of people that have followed a parliamentary process and got their legal authority under the fast track to proceed with their investments. Mining is jobs. Mining is wealth for the nation. Mining means export revenue. Please join with me and get rid of these transcendental tofus. They don't have the best interests of our nation at heart. Shane Jones, pro-mining, pro-jobs, and the owner of a beautiful expression, dig, baby, dig.
That is hilarious. It's kind of funny. It seems like they have taken a page out of Donald Trump's book, where, drill, baby, drill, for Donald Trump in the U.S., here in the U.S. And Shane Jones here does a, dig, baby, dig. And so really cool character, pretty straightforward, common sense, not really interest in the mumbo jumbo of being a politician. What Shane Jones, from what I could tell from the conversations that we had with him, or the conversation that we had with him, this is a guy who just wants New Zealand to win. He wants New Zealand to be successful, to be able to be affordable, right? Be affordable for the next generation. And that is what he and Winston Peters are all about, right? They're the type of mentality where, it's not fighting over the same slice of pie. They want to grow the pie. When you grow the pie, your slice gets bigger, your life gets better, and there's more opportunity for you and your children in the next generation. So that was kind of like a sneak peek of Shane Jones. As I mentioned, for our paying members on YouTube, they have early access to it. It's demonetized. Everything that we have that's member only is demonetized. So that's one way you can contribute, and also, get some early access to some of the content that we put on. With that being said, Mr. Aotearoa is tuning in from Facebook. So he says Las Vegas is holding it down, doing the best we can, Mr. Aotearoa. So appreciate that. Shogun, one of our paying members, greatly appreciate it. Shogun, appreciate the support. He says, malo tua, taria tupe te ke kau whakapalaku ke mamao. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that word there, Shogun. Whakapalaku. Maybe that's a little too sophisticated for me, Shogun. Mahaki fo idea ki maaange. Eh? Kaya to fit atamaya ko ni mahalo ko fo idea ko ya. Appreciate it, Shogun. Appreciate the support. As I mentioned earlier, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through some content, some comments from social media. We also got some requests from people who shared some videos and wanted us to react to on live here and on the podcast. So we're going to start with one right here. And this is a video. Trying to think. Tui posted on TikTok, and one of our viewers tagged us in it, asked us to kind of do a reaction to the video, and it has to do with the massacres that are associated with Tupo the First. I'm gonna turn down the music just because I don't want that to be flagged as copyright. But I'm gonna just put so that this it's just a shot, and we'll read through the context here on the right on the what the description has. But Malo, malo. So the translation, waiting to push away the sewage rats. Haters in the comments. Yes, that's 100% agreed there, Shogun. That's what we're going to do. And, show some love to those who probably um, who always resist us, but add to our growth and exposure because they're guaranteed to comment, they're guaranteed to share many of them, and they're actually get on some social media platforms, Shogun, they get like badges because of how active they are, and we'll see some of those probably tonight. So that's a great point. Mari malo for the translation, Shogun. Malo malo. So coming back to this kind of video, the screenshot, and we're big fans of Tui. He does some great work. And actually, before we get to that, I'm actually going to look up another video that Tui made. I believe it was Tui who had another video that I thought was pretty interesting. And let me see if I can find it here in the background. But he had created a video on the Tongan word. Let me see here. Right here, I found it. Actually, that's a good point. So we're gonna pivot. This is what's cool about doing live sessions. You gotta be pivot. You gotta be able to pivot. We're gonna pursue this one. So this is an example of the great videos that we do and appreciate um, that Tui does. We're gonna have a little bit of a different position on his other video, but for this one, we're gonna we're gonna look at this video and see what this is all about. So he's going into Tui, into the word Tui, and look at what he sees. Oh, so before we get there, let's read. It says, very interesting, realizing that Samoan had told George Pratt. George Pratt created one of the most recognized and reliable dictionaries, Samoan dictionaries. I think he lived in Samoa for 60 years. Let's get into George Pratt's history here because I think that is an important thing to kind of give context. George Pratt Samoan Dictionary. Give the background and reliability of his Samoan dictionary. So let's do this. We're going to ask our digital assistant here to do some research for us and kind of get some context on that. So, who is George Pratt? George Pratt lived from 1817 to 1894, was a reverend and missionary affiliated with the London Missionary Society, LMS. He arrived in Samoa in 1839 and resided there for approximately 40 years. Oh, I was saying 60 years. It's 40 years until 1879, primarily on the island of Savaii. During his long tenure, he immersed himself in Samoan culture, language to support missionary work, including Bible translation efforts. Pratt is best known for authoring one of the earliest and most foundational works on the Samoan language, a Samoan dictionary, English and Samoan and English, with a short grammar of the Samoan dialect. First published in 1862 by the London Missionary Society's Press in Samoa, the book includes bi-directional vocabulary, Samoan to English and English to Samoan, along with a concise grammar section. Later editions appeared, such as revised versions in 1876 and 1878, often called a grammar and dictionary of Samoan language with English and Samoan vocabulary, with contributions or revisions by others like Samuel James Whitney in some printings, and expansions adding hundreds of words from native sources, Eastern Polynesia roots, and related languages. The work was digitized and reprinted multiple times. That's the digital version, is probably what Tui was kind of digging through in that video earlier. Background and significance. Pratt compiled the dictionary based on over 2 decades by the 1862 edition of direct observation and consultation with native Samoan speakers. He described carefully examining words with intelligent natives, acting as important informants or pundits. He was among the first to systematically document the Samoan language in a comprehensive dictionary format. Early missionary efforts focused more on Bible translation, but Pratt's work provided dedicated linguistic reference. It played a key role in standardizing Samoan orthography. I can't say that, orthography, and supporting education's translation and linguistic study in Samoa. Oh, always want to recognize our paying members. Mel, thank you very much. Malo, appreciate the support. We are always excited to see whenever our paying members of the channel contribute, and Mel, really appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see here. As a 19th century missionary work, it reflects the era's context, compiled for evangelical purposes, with potential biases towards missionary perspectives or omissions of certain cultural ritual terms deemed sensitive. However, its strength lies in Pratt's long immersion and reliance on native input, making it more reliable than many contemporary colonial era linguistic records. Later revisions improved by incorporating additional native sourced words. It is not a modern descriptive dictionary, but it remains highly valued for historical and comparative Polynesian linguistics, with no major scholarly dismissals of its core accuracy. Overall, it is considered a reliable and pioneering contribution, especially given its early date and the author's extensive firsthand experience. Copies and scans are freely available online. So, this dictionary is a one of the oldest, maybe it's actually, it was the first dictionary. And Pratt was in Samoa for 40 years, consulted with the natives in Samoa on the meaning and origin of words. And so, why that is important is this is not a modern day dictionary that has been tainted by modern day ideas and perspectives. And, as things happen, words change over time. And so, what's really cool about this specific dictionary is it is considered, as mentioned here, it is considered a historically accurate or reliable dictionary, and kind of is closer to the root meanings of certain words, right? And because of that, it's probably your safest bet on the origin of words and where words come from. And why is that interesting? It is interesting because, let's come back to it, because look at what Tui finds on what the word Tui means, right? He looks it up, and lo and behold, it's a Tongan word, right? It says here a high chief, a king, a Tongan word. So the word tui, as historically accurate in Samoa, was recognized as a Tongan word. Interesting. Very interesting. This is this is where things become very, very interesting because we've had this discussion many times online, just like Ha'amoa and it turns to Samoa. Historically speaking, Samoa was always called Ha'amoa because the Tongans said that is the Moa clan, the Moa clan. That's why Ha'amoa. Those are one of the most recognized clans that maybe settled Ha'amoa first, and that's why they were called Ha'amoa. Eventually, the name changed to Samoa, and then now it is um, now there's this new definition that's trying to say Sa as in the center, right, or sacred, and then Moa center. That's what those are those people who say, "Oh, Samoa, sacred center." But for Tongans, like, no, 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 no. Before you were Samoa, you were Ha'amoa. And that Samoa is just a morphing from the original word Ha'amoa, right? And so that's something that's very, very important. And this is the other thing too. Mr. Aotearoa and I have gone back. We have a couple episodes on first contacts of Samoa with Europeans, and it is overwhelming on several points. Number one, that what made a high chief in Samoa a high chief was his blood. And what about his blood? They said that this person was Eiki. They didn't say Ali'i. They didn't say Matai or whatever. They said Eiki. That's what made these chiefs special and unique. And what makes them special and unique or Eiki? It was their relation to the Tuitonga. That's what made them Eiki, right? And they also noticed that the higher the chief was, the less likely they were to have tattoos. And because if they had tattoos, that means their blood was spilt. And if it was spilt, that was taboo because Ho'eki blood was sacred. And that's why the spilling of blood was not permitted. This is why the Tuitonga was not permitted, or at least it was taboo for a Tuitonga to get tattoos. And apparently, with first contact with Europeans, they saw that same trend amongst the Samoans. We have a couple comments here. We'll swing by. Mr. Aotearoa says, Tua, I called it in our earlier live digital kava session episodes that the Tui word is a Tongan word. So it is very likely the Tui titles in all of Ha'amoa are titles given by the Tuitonga. That is highly probable now that we're looking at this definition. And Masi, isn't it funny, Mr. Aotearoa, how many times we just had the podcast, we're having discussions, and we just make certain observations. Like you make that observation where you're like, man, the gut feeling from our conversations is like, Tui may be a Tongan word, right? That's a little bit different. But we didn't have direct evidence for it, but there was just like, it just seems like it, and boom, we come across something like this, right? Then we were talking about the term navigators to Ha'amoa when the French were just sailing right by Manua, and they saw the navigating sailboats, and they come out. They were thoroughly impressed with their navigation skills, called them navigators, and we just jokingly, well, dude, what if that was the Tongans out there? They just didn't realize it. Well, lo and behold, we go into the first contact accounts, and it is very clear two things. It is the Tongans who are doing all the traveling back and forth, what we would consider international travel today to different countries. And the large kalias or the large sailboats were associated with the Tongans. So whenever you would see the very large double hull canoes, they would say, "Oh, that's the Tongans there," because the Tongans were doing all the traveling. Look, all these gut feelings, these things matter, and the details matter, and that's what we're finding out here. Here's a couple other comments here. Slick Rick Malo, one of the OGs from when we began this journey in the podcast, he says, "For years I can remember how Amoa took that offensive, but us Tongans never broke it down to them as to what Ha'amoa clan meant clan." Yes, and this is maybe what happens, Slick Rick, when colonization happens and we get separated from each other, then all of a sudden those connections and those origins for words gets lost in translation. Malo Slick Rick, always good to see you. Shogun, paying member of the Polynesian Eyes YouTube channel, so greatly appreciate it. He says, "I'll never call them by the S name. They will always be known as Ha'amoa Tua. The New Zealand Prime Minister is about to get a Matai title." It's such a willy nilly system, and they have the nerve. Well, see, and that's the thing, right? The Matai's titles are, dime a dozen, giving it out for free. Hey, it's cool. That's the Ha'amoa way. That's the way they like to do it. Okay, good for them. But that's definitely not how it's done in the capital of the Polynesian Empire, for sure. So this is we'll come back to the video here. Um, Spent close to 60 years the Tui words Tongan. So let's just kind of see if this video has any more. So a really cool find here by Tui. Maybe that was the end of the video. Oh, so he's moving around. So it's a Tongan word. And so Tui is a high chief, a king. There we go. Is a Tongan word when referring it to a high chief. Very, very cool. Very cool definition there. So um this is pretty funny. It's funny how you read these comments here. It says tui doesn't mean anything in Samoa as far as hierarchy. Only in Manua is the term used for king or paramount chief, which is funny because in the Western Islands, there's tons of tui ana, and I think that's what tui here is mentioning. Um, let me see here. Oh, Tonga, I guess we're pretty relentless on them here. You have to understand that Manua was most likely a separate world from the rest of Samoa as far as high rankings. Till now, some Samoan villages still sing of Manua not helping in Tonga Savaii and Upolu war due to ties Manua and Tonga had. Western part of Samoa had to do intermarriages to keep any type of peace. Just my point. Oh, that's fair. I mean, that's similar to something that Jake Fitzemanu shared there. But hey, anyways, we're getting a little distracted. But that was one. I mean, Tui does some really great stuff. So, follow him, like, share his stuff. He finds some gold nuggets there, but um, that was a cool little golden nugget there, right? That the word Tui is Tongan. So really like the work that Tui does. Really appreciate the efforts that he makes to add this content. Coming back to this video that we were asked to react to, I'll read through the content here before we get into the description. During the massacres of 1837 in Tonga, Christian warriors killed pregnant women which were on the non-Christian force and ripped their bodies open to kill their babies inside. Pretty kind of gruesome kind of description there. So what we did is, let me see if I can find it. We had our digital assistant. There we go. we had Grok. Actually, let's go through what he has in the description before we get to Grok to give us some analysis. Grok isn't perfect, but he's pretty dang good. Pretty dang good at what he does. Don't cry about it. The sad truth of how Christianity spread in Tonga. In the 1837 Civil War in Tonga, and I'm just reading the description he has in the video, led by the alliance between King George the First and Wesleyan missionaries, represents a period where religious conversion was inextricably linked to military conquest. The massacres, gruesome details, the conflict was a holy war intended to systematically dismantle traditional heathen resistance. Though this is partially true, I'll kind of respond to those words first. Tupou first did battle and conquer and destroy a lot of the existing taulas or priests on the outer islands and other areas of Tongatapu as well. But you have to remember that this type of heathen worship that was going on, a lot of it was ancestor worship, and a lot of these new trends of worship that had developed since the chaos um, of the civil wars in Tonga emerged. And something that's really interesting is Taufa'aha would abolish and demolish all these shrines throughout the outer islands and on Tongatapu. But there's one place he did not do that at, and that was in Mu'a. In Mu'a, the Tuitonga resided in Lampaha. He had his priests there, and there were sacred areas there as well. And it's also interesting that the Taula Kautai of the Tuitonga um, cured Taufa'ahau and gave him the name Taufa'ahau, right? Which is Taufa, it's like a storm, a little storm, and then Ahau from Ahau, the little storm from Ahau is the translation for Taufa'ahau's name, which he keeps even after being Christianed. But you notice he does not purge the priests in the ancient capital, and there's reasons for that. Probably he is very familiar with the positions and the doctrines of the Tuitonga's priests because he was cured and he grew up in Mu'a and was very familiar with that. And yet he did not demolish those. And I think that a big driver behind that was there was a huge difference between the very old religion that the Tuitonga and his Taulas followed and the emergence of offshoots, ideas that were not tied or grounded with the old religion, and that this new type of ancestor worshiping and idol worshiping that became very prevalent out of the chaos of the civil wars. All right. It says, based on historical accounts and records of the time, the Hule Fortress slaughter, this remains the most infamous event. In January 1837, the Christian forces of King George surrounded the Hule Fortress. When the inhabitants refused to surrender, the fortress was stormed. Historical records indicate that all 300 inhabitants, including men, women, and children, were massacred. So, um, our friend on the Offside podcast, Sapolu, shoot, I keep forgetting his name, but I think his last name is Sapolu. He took a similar position. And the reason why he took this position was because of Peter Dillon, this guy right here. This guy obviously he was a traitor, supposedly. He obviously did not have a good relationship with the missionaries and had a negative perspective. And so, out of that negative relationship with the missionaries, he was very critical of what the missionaries were doing, the impact, and anyone who was allied with the missionaries. Couple things that are important that in a video that Maui Tegelangi episode that Maui Tegelangi showed joined us about the Hule Fortress that is also called the Hule Slaughter or Massacre. A lot of people say that the Hule Massacre was because of Christianity, and that was not the case. The case of the Hule Fortress issue was the people, I believe in Nuku, they rejected the chief that was ordained or sent to them by Taufa Ahau. I think it's the Tu'ibakano uh, chief that was there, and they expelled him. And you have to remember that Tonga is a very centralized power and not decentralized power. And the person who authorizes and has the power to designate who is the chief over which village is the king. And the king had said, Tuivakano is going to be your chief, respect him, right? Help him with his things, and he will also in return take care and do what's right for the village and the people. So really, when the people in the Hule fortress expel Tuivakano or the chief that's been assigned to them, they're really that's viewed as treason by Tupo the First. And he sends out envoys to the Hule Fort telling them, you guys need to evacuate this and dissolve this fort. And I'm giving you a chance. If you leave with your life, you leave with whatever you have. However, if you stay behind and you resist, that is a treasonous action and you will be dealt with appropriately. Treason is punishable by death. And so what happened was Taufa Hao gave those warnings, told them to submit to their chief. They wouldn't. So Taufa Hao shows up. And it's actually the missionaries who try to discourage Tupo the First from, executing this slaughter. Why? Because they said there are Christians inside that fort as well, not just heathens. And Tupo the First told the missionaries, this is a matter of law and order. If I cannot back my own words, then my words mean nothing. And Tupo the First understood that when you say something, you have to do it. And because he had given the declarations, he told them to return their chief into his rightful position, to dissolve the fort, and then also if you're submissive and you obey that and you leave the fort, no harm or danger will happen to you. But because they stayed behind and they were acting in treason, that is what drove the massacre of everyone in the fort, because they were committing treason. It was not because of Christianity. And in fact, the missionaries expressed that there were Christians inside that fort. So that is a common misunderstanding, something I didn't know as well. The Ngeleia destruction. Before Hule, the fortress of Ngeleia was razed to the ground, its building burnt, and its people either killed or taken prisoners of war. Apparently, the history that is confirmed is that there wasn't a life lost in Ngeleia, that they surrendered. So the fort was probably burnt down, but there was no killing or massacring of people on the Ngeleia fort. Bible execution. Soldiers were often encouraged by missionary sermons. For example, Joshua 10 was cited to justify smiting enemies with the edge of the sword, framing the slaughter as divine judgment rather than political warfare. That sounds exactly like someone who is anti religion would express, like Peter Dillon, in pushing back on the missionaries to have maybe the government or someone limit their influence and their resources and their ability to convert people in Polynesia and in the Pacific. Who is Peter Dillon? Remember, Peter Dillon is that guy who's giving this very, very negative and potentially incorrect version of history. Chevalier Peter Dillon was a Irish-born sandalwood trader, explorer, and former French consul. He is best known historically for discovering the fate of the lost La Perouse expedition, but in Tonga, he became the primary whistleblower against the missions. Once again, depending on what position you take, whether this is political or personal, but Peter Dillon is a outspoken critic of the missionaries. Depth of his letters. Despite only staying in Tonga for 1 week in 1837, Dillon's letters were incredibly detailed and scathing. He wrote directly to the British Admiralty and the Wesleyan Mission Society, accusing the missionaries of being the captains of the host and instigating murders. His accusations, he claimed the missionaries did not just observe the war, but actively encouraged King George to use improper cruelty, including the mutilation of women and children, to ensure the total victory of Christianity. Once again, he is definitely not a fan of Christianity and maybe an atheist. I don't know. Sees religion as the source of all problems. Key individuals will skip that, but very interesting here. I think it's very easy to make the assumptions that were made, but as we will see here from what Grok was able to do some studying for us. So the prompt was, what is the documented history of Taufa Hautupo, the first leading battles or war where pregnant women were killed and their unborn babies torn out and killed? So that's the prompt, right? That's the accusation that's made. So the response is, there is no documented history of Taufa Hautupo the first, also known as King George Tupo the first of Tonga, who reigned from 1845 to 1893, leading any battles or wars involving the killing of pregnant women or the tearing out slash killing of their unborn babies. So he's saying there is no documented, verified history on that. Extensive searches across historical records, academic sources, missionary accounts, Wikipedia biographies, journal articles on Tongan wars, and broader Pacific missionary reports from the Wesleyans who worked closely with him, secondary histories or oral tradition summaries mention this specific atrocity, right? Or anything remotely like it under his leadership. So, like I said, I think this may be driven by one guy's account who could be very, very biased. The Dillon dude. Key facts from documented history. Taufahau rose as a warrior chief in the early 19th century amid Tonga's civil wars. His major campaigns include gaining control of Vava'u, assuming the Tuikanukuporu title and nominal control of Tongatapu, the Battle of Kamba in Fiji, where Tongan forces, under his overall influence, though not always personal command, aided Fijian allies, support for related actions in Fiji via his cousin Ma'afu. These were typical chiefly conflicts for unification, not campaigns of targeted civilian atrocities. After his conversion to Christianity, he actively used faith to end pre Christian practices like widespread cannibalism, human sacrifice, and excessive intertribal violence. He promulgated law codes and the 1875 Constitution, establishing Tonga as a unified constitutional monarchy. Historians portray him as a reformer who brought peace and modernization, not a perpetrator of grotesque war crimes. Let's see here. Let's see if we have one to read these. Related, unrelated elements confused in stories. Um, Holy wars or massacres in Tonga, there was civil conflict involving Christians versus traditionalist factions shortly after his conversion. Trader Peter Dillon accused participants, including forces aligned with Taufahau, of massacres, but scholarly analysis debates the charges without any reference to pregnant women or fetal mutilization. Tactics are compared to biblical patterns in some accounts, but nothing matches the query. So, really, just sounds like accusations at this point. Ancient Tongan myths and legends, pre Christian tales occasionally describe extreme violence, such as women being killed with their unborn child's viscera thrown into the sea. These are legendary stories from culture centuries earlier, not historical events linked to Taufa'ahau. Fijian pregnant women's cave. This is a cultural legend site in Fiji about a supernatural lie detector or hidden pregnancies, not a massacre site or anything involving Tongan led killings. Mentions of Tupo the First nearby are unrelated. Wow. So once again, I mean, there's not a lot of quote unquote documented history that Taufahau actually was killing people because they were Christian. It was primarily unifying and getting control over Tongatapu, and that the killings weren't driven by, you know, people not accepting Christianity. Missionaries and European observers present during his era, who documented Tongan wars in detail, praised his role in Christianization and stabilization. Any such extreme act would have been recorded and condemned, yet it never appears. In short, the specific claim has no basis in any verifiable historical document. It may stem from misremembered ancient legends, confused with other Pacific conflicts, or unsubstantiated rumors. Dupo the first documented legacy is as the father of modern Tonga, a unifier who ended the worst excesses of traditional warfare. If you ever, all right. So once again, the point is, it looks like it's highly unlikely that Tupo the First actually killed people just because of their religion, and that such gruesome practices as ripping out unborn babies and killing them is highly unlikely that that's a reality. A lot of it seems to be driven around people who hated Christianity and the missionaries anyway. So very, very biased. Does that mean they can't be accurate? No, but it is hard to take their position at face value when we know such um, conflict of interests may exist. So that's the first video we were going to take a look at. The next one, this is a video that we received from Rockstone. He's joined us a handful of times on the Polynesianized podcast. And especially in our early days, there were multiple times he's joined us. So greatly appreciate that, Rockstone. But he had shared this video with us. We're going to watch it. I turned off the sound primarily because I don't want to have any copyright strikes or anything. But here's the video. Don't need that because it's just screenshots. So there's Polynesia. Ha'apai is number 6, right? So I think the title of this is like the top 6 oldest human remains found in Polynesia. So he says number 6 is Ha'apai. Oldest known human settlement evidence in the Ha'apai Island group, Tonga, comes from Lapita period archaeological sites dating to about 825 to 810 BC. These early sites are found on several Ha'apai islands, such as Ha'ano, Foa, Lifuka, Wiha, Ha'afeva, and Tungua, where archaeologists have uncovered decorated pottery, shell middens, and stone tools, showing that the small groups of people lived there over 2,800 years ago as part of the first spread of Lapita settlers through Tonga. So he says, Vava'u or Ha'apai, you're in 6th place. In 5th place is Uvea, right? Wallace and Futuna, but Uvea. Oldest settlement in Uvea, 850 to 800 BC, about 2,000 to 2,900 years ago. Culture Lapita evidence, shell middens and stone tools found at early coastal sites around the island. Interesting. Number four is Vavao, right? With the oldest settlements there. Says first Lapita settlement in Vavao, people arrived and established settlements around 850 and 810 based on decorated Lapita ceramics found on several islands. These early sites represent some of the earliest human occupation in the Vavao group, connected to the broader Lapita colonization of Western and Central Polynesia. So once again, saying Vavao is coming in fourth, I believe. Oh, let's pause that. Sorry. We did Uvea. We did Vavao. What's next? Tongatapu in third place. Woo! We officially arrived, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Nukuleka Tongatapu, location northeast coast of Tongatapu near the entrance of the Fangauta Lagoon. Age, archaeological dating indicates settlement by Lapita around 900 to 850 BCE. And this is carbon dating. Roughly 2,850 to 2,900 years ago. So interesting, right? You say Nukuleka is in third place. Second place is Upolu. And Murifanua and Upolu Island archaeologists have found Lapita pottery shards that date to about 930 to 800 BC. Now it's saying it's 2,800 years ago, right? So that's what he's saying there. And this goes back to 2,800 years ago as well. So I don't know how that actually works out there, right? It's over 2,800 years ago. And this is saying 2,850 to 2009. That's over 2,800 years ago. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Um, Site is generally considered the oldest confirmed settlement evidence in Samoa and ties the islands into the broader early movement of Pacific people across the west of Polynesia. So that's the age of the pottery. Like I'm not sure how the age of the pottery means that's the age of arrival. You could have had the pottery for hundreds of years made earlier and brought over. But once again, this is some of the inconsistencies that people just jump on and make these assumptions, right? Just because the pottery is older doesn't mean the people that arrived there were older. But anyways, okay. Number one, Ofu. Let's see. So the oldest known settlement evidence at the Toanga site on Ofu Island comes from deep archaeological deposits showing human occupation going back about 3,000 years. Okay, at least that one's older. Excavation at Toanga have uncovered long sequences of artifacts, including pottery, shell tools, and faunal remains that demonstrate sustained settlement on the coastal terrace of Oahu dating back 3 millennia. Right? So that's the claim. The claim is Nukuleka, Hapai, and Vava'u are younger than Samoa on Manua. Let's see what the other islands on Ofu and on Upolu, right? And you notice some of it is just the pottery being dated. And then these ones, it's not clear. It just says archaeological dating indicates settlement. People by 900 and 850. So, all right, that's fair. That's his position. Well, let's go see what Grok says. We're going to go see what the evidence actually says there. And the prompt was, can you compare and verify the oldest settlement and human remains found in Tonga and Samoa? And give me the top five, starting with the fifth first. So now we take this TikTok video And we told Grok, go look at all the scientific studies, go look at all the data out there, make a judgment on what are the oldest and newest. Remember, we've had David Burley, who did a lot of this information studies, very respected around the world for his research and his capabilities. But let's see what Grok brings to the table here. It says Tonga has the verified oldest settlement evidence in Polynesia, and thus among Tonga and Samoa, while Samoa's earliest is slightly later in the colonization sequence. Both are tied to the Lapita culture, identified primarily via distinctive dentate stamped pottery tools and middens rather than abundant human bones. No pre Lapita human presence exists in either country. So, oldest settlements, verified date. Interesting that it has that word verified there, right? Tonga, Nukuleka Tonga Tapu, Polynesia's oldest confirmed settlement, ultra precise uranium thorium dating on 16 coral tools used as nail files. Um, from beach sand beneath the site pins, first landfall to within 8 years. See, that's the difference between radiocarbon dating and the uranium thorium. Way more precise. When you do carbon dating, the carbon dating is the band is like hundreds of years in each direction, right? For anywhere between 2 and 500 years ish, depending on how accurate the carbon dating goes. But with the uranium thorium dating, it's within 8 years or 16 years, right? In either direction. And it says that it was 826 BCE, which is approximately 2,800 ish years. Earlier radiocarbon more estimates were 900 to 850 BCE. The refined method confirms it as the founding colony. Lapita pottery here includes rare Western style motifs linked directly to Melanesia. That's the other thing too. That's interesting. The not all Lapita pottery shards are created equal. Some are made domestically. Some have certain patterns that directly tie to Melanesia. And so, just because you have Lapita pottery there doesn't mean that they originate all from Melanesia. Samoa, it's Mulifanua, Upolu, only known Lapita pottery site. Radiocarbon dates on shells 930 to 800 BC, 3000. This marks Samoa's initial settlement, but follows Tonga in the northward expansion along the Tonga Samoa corridor. So, once again, this is saying that it's after Tonga, right? Tonga is around 850 to 900 BCE. Over here, it's 930 to 800. So very close. This is very much aligned with what David Burley kind of expressed in his findings as well. Um, let's see. Let's come down. Sequence verified across studies. Lapita people reached Tonga first, expanded within Tonga, Ha'apai to Vava'u, then to Samoa shortly after. Dates overlap with calibration error margins, 50 to 100 years, but Nukuleka is consistently the earliest founding site. Right? Looks like we have some more comments here. Mr. Aotearoa says more fake news from our Ha'amoa cousins. He says, LOL, Loto Leanga in Malo, Mr. Aotearoa. Mel says there is a clan in Sikaina called Sa'atui clan in Melanesia. Interesting. What's the meaning behind Sikaina there, Mel? But thank you for sharing. All right, oldest human remains. See, I like the human remains better than the pottery for obvious reasons, right? The pottery could have come from whenever. Could have been made hundreds of years before and brought over by someone. And if you find the pottery, yeah, the pottery could be hundreds of years older than when people actually arrived to that island. So oldest human remains, Talasiu, right? Let's see, multiple individuals, at least 40, in relaxed context, burned and unburned bones analyzed for mortuary practices. This is the oldest securely dated skeletal assemblage in Polynesia. See, I like the human remains. Got humans there. So when people arrived, providing direct evidence of early Polynesian health, bone biology, and funerary rites during the Lapita to plainware transition. Samoa, no Lapita era or immediately post Lapita human remains have been found. Early coastal deposits are scarce or destroyed by subsidence and other geological processes. Later sites yield none from the first 1,000 years of settlement. So, once again, there are no human remains on Ha'amoa that are as old at all, right? That have been found from the Lapita era. And the ones that have been found in Tonga are the oldest human remains in Polynesia. Top five oldest settlements, findings across Tonga and Samoa ranked from fifth to first. Dates clustered tightly. Oh, I see. That's what. Okay. Appreciate that, Mel. Dates cluster tightly due to rapid colonization and dating precision limits, but the archaeological sequence and name sites allow this ranking based on earliest reliable dates, site significance, and colonization order. Tonga first. All are Lapita associated settlements, pottery, tools, middens, human remains ranked later. Fifth, most recent among the top five, Mulifanua Lapita site in Ipolu. Find that funny, right? Isn't that funny? In the other video, he had it almost the complete opposite. You know, this was being older. Only decorated Lapita pottery in Samoa submerged but critical for confirming settlement. So this was found in a submerged area. Fourth, Vava'u Group, Lapita sites marks northward expansion within Tonga, diverse early ceramics and faunal remains. Third, Ha'apai Group, Lapita sites, multiple well-dated villages showing rapid colonization after Nukuleka. Additional early Whangauta Lagoon Tongatapu sites in Tonga. Large concentration of Lapita deposits around the lagoon, slightly later than Nukuleka, but part of the same founding phase. So, first and second are right next to each other, right? Let's see here. First, oldest, Nukuleka village site, Tongatapu, Tonga. Polynesia's founding settlement, Western Lapita motifs, and exotic temper confirmed direct voyaging from Melanesia. They notice they don't say that the same for Samoa because it seems like a lot of that pottery is not directly from Melanesia. It may have been made locally um, in Polynesia and it's not sourced from Melanesia. Also interesting to know that David Burley says that they found white Lapita shards that they don't know where it comes from. They've tested all the typical places in Western Polynesia, Melanesia, and have not found where those white Lapita pot shards come from. Still a mystery. Um, Note on human remains in the ranking, Talasiu burials are the oldest bones, but post-date all initial Lapita settlements by 100 to 200 years. So they fall outside of this top five settlement list. No earlier bones exist in either country. These conclusions are cross. This is the difference between what we're reading here and what we just saw on TikTok. These conclusions are cross verified from peer reviewed sources. Example, there's our buddy, David Burley's excavations, PNAS, Radiocarbon Journal, consistent archaeological consensus. No credible earlier dates or sites have emerged. Geological challenges in Samoa explain the sparser record there compared to Tonga's richer coastal Lapita sites. If you have a specific list or additional context for the top five, I can redefine further. So, once again, these videos that make claims online say that, you know, this is the truth. This is it's just another form of selective data recognition. I mean, when you do the cross referencing, you look at the scientific historical data and even oral history, it points to Tonga as being the oldest and so forth. But once again, we get called being divisive. We being called trying to cause trouble in line when all we're doing is looking at the evidence and reading the data. That's all we're doing, right? We're not making up stuff on the fly as we go. Um, let's see here. I think we can do one comment. Let's do one comment. One more comment. We're hitting the hour. We're gonna make. Let's watch this one video. Okay. Um, see if we can find the video. Okay. So we're gonna watch one more video before we close it out. I think we've achieved enough of a discussion on early Christianity in Tonga and history, understanding that the word tui comes from Tonga, even from the ancient Samoan dictionary, one of its most reliable historical dictionaries. Um, we're going to end it with a short here that we had from one of our previous live digital kava sessions, and then maybe um, some reaction to that in the comments. Let's see here. You should be able to hear.
You would want to join conversations because everybody knows that all the islands were colonized, and the colonizers for like a generation or two would like disallow even speaking the language,
Mm-hmm.
disallow passing on knowledge. And so there's a huge gap that exists of knowledge that's been able to filter down to the more modern generations. And a lot of the history that was written down during this gap was from the colonizers' perspective. And so they didn't understand everything that they saw or
Mm.
everything that all the information they came across. And so, hey, I mean, Tonga kind of does have an edge because we were never colonized. And so I would naturally think that it should be uh, easier to swallow for all the neighboring islands to accept that fact that Tonga was never colonized, so that we would naturally have an edge on understanding and determining what was truly our culture and what was not, and to sieve through that foreigner slash colonizer lens that was inherited by a lot of the colonized countries. But I guess maybe not so.
No, and that's the thing, and that's one of the things that we've kind of shared here. I think because we live in the modern world now, and we have to say Samoa, we have to say Tonga, we have to say Tokelau as it's like these separate entities. I, I really do believe this that Tonga surviving colonization is a win for everyone. Yeah, so that is, you know, a lot of people think that Tongans are the only ones who like you're trying to be overly prideful, trying to be blah blah blah. Um, and that's the reason why Tongans only talk about the colonies not being colonized as being important. And that it's only something that Tonga has access to or claim. I totally disagree with that perspective because we were all a unified civilization and people, and for all intents and purposes, nation. Because there was a unified leader, there was social structure, political structure, religious, and even economic structure within that country. Um, and and because Tonga wasn't colonized, we do have an advantage of expressing from our perspective on why and how things are the way they are. And I think we have to really keep that in mind. We're not saying that everything we say is perfect, but we do have certain unique inputs and perspectives that are very unique and bring a perspective that matters, right? And so that's let's get this read. So this is let's I want to read this comment here. It says, as your Hawaiian cousin, I've always thought that the lack of foreign pollution in Tonga was a fortunate win and we all got lucky. For roots and windows, back through our culture and its physical presentation itself. Also, our people coming out of Tonga to Hawaii and elsewhere for what they bring as far as influence, also the actual people, the blood, the vessels for the DNA that can maintain the migration of the Polynesian people. I mean, I really appreciated this comment because it took a more positive spin. This person seems like they somewhat agree with our perspective. Maybe they don't, but they're just trying to recognize, at least recognize that Tonga not being colonized, there is a unique position that Tonga brings to the table. And as we've discussed here, Tonga barely survived colonization, took a lot of effort, sacrifice, and really at the end of the day, it was by the grace of God with Tupo the first offering Tonga to God to protect it. And, you know, we we are accused of being divisive, trying to divide people. We're not. We're trying to seek after the truth and what the truth looks like. It is what it is. And if we can't recognize it and accept it for what it is, then how can we be united as a people? How can we, if that is the truth, that Tonga is the capital and the origin of Polynesia, and we are unified under any other type of origin story, how can we be long standing or have real unity if it's based on something that's not the truth, right? Is there a slam dunk anywhere that one place or the other is the origin? No, because no one knows all things. But by all indicators, and by all that we can see around, whether it's oral history, scientific studies, or confirmation, or any measure that you have out there, Tonga seems to be leading in those categories, and that's not something that should divide us. That's something that should unite us. So, with that being said, we're going to end the live digital convo session today. Really appreciate everyone's interaction, comments. We weren't able to get to every comment, but really appreciate the interaction there. And once again, if you want to contribute, the easiest way you can is to like, share, subscribe. There's also a recommendation from one of the viewers to encourage everyone. There's usually a hype button. If you click on that, it gets us exposure to more people. And we would greatly appreciate that. The other thing, too, if you are a paying member, we thank you, we appreciate you, and invite those if you are able and are interested to become a paying member. That goes a long way. But as always, like, share, comment. That's one of the easy ways that you can share the program and help it grow and sustain the momentum that we've had on all the digital platforms. With that being said, I want to thank everyone for another evening on the Polynesian Eyes podcast, the completion of another live digital kava session. And as we do at the end of every show, we say, be bold, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, and always, always stay curious. Till next time, peace.